to start our class now and just say that commissions are under pressure. I should have that song, Under Pressure, because you guys are getting like infiltrated with all these offerings from all these companies that say we're this or that. And so the more companies you can bring up to our attention, the better. And I'm just going to pick on Redfin first, because Redfin, I'm going to make sure I'm sharing properly so you guys can see. Redfin, if you go to their website, they say they are what percentage for listing? 1, right? And when you buy and sell with us, okay? And then on the buy side, if you go in and look at the fine print, get money back, we put money towards your closing costs because our technology makes us more efficient. That's what they say. And then it goes into the refund fund. So it's not available in all markets and where it's prohibited. And Redfin Refund is provided at or after closing, and it's subject to lender approval with minimum commissions, and see all terms and conditions. So when you get into this, if you actually read through it, there's a lot of subject to, and the minimum commission is actually dictated by each market. And so if you go all the way down to the very end, you can see Tampa here, that there's a minimum commission that they're going to collect. And this is an example of a $250,000 house. They're going to collect $2,750. So just know there's a lot of asterisks and a lot of, limited to, and this is and that. And yet you guys are running into this. And the truth is, these companies are having an impact. So if we actually go into my broker metrics, I'm going to show you my screen here. This I just pulled like minutes ago. Let's take a second to show you this. This is our 3 counties, Pinellas, Pasco, and Hillsborough County. And then this is our Clearwater office, our Tampa office, and our Gulfside office. You can see that we're doing pretty darn well, considering all that has happened this year in terms of volume and sold volume. We're holding our own. We haven't had any massive hits. In fact, Gulfside's really growing. They're up 14%, so congratulations for them. And yet, what we're seeing in our commission conversations are these disruptors over here, which I'm going to refer to as Zoro. Zillow, Opendoor, Redfin, and OfferPad. So Zoro is actually, 54 Realty is the Zoro or the Zillow representative. We got Opendoor, OfferPad, and Redfin. Now Redfin, we're going to focus on Redfin today because look at the increase of market share they've had. And if you drill into this, I can drill into this, I can just super nerdy detail. What we're seeing is if you actually pull up their listing inventory, that's happened since COVID. So people are online searching, right? Thinking, should I sell my house? And they're actually going to Redfin now, which is their instant offer. So they're taking those leads that are coming in and they're saying, hey, we can do a 1% listing as long as you buy with us as well. And we'll give you some sort of rebate on the buy side. And you guys are competing with that right now. That's a big deal, isn't it? And so their impact is that massive increase that they've had. It's really those things. So we want to empower you to be able to defend your commission, not only in a traditional sense, in a traditional way with objection handlers and all the things that you've done in the past, but we want to show you how do you attack Redfin? How do you go after Redfin? And by the end of the class today, I'm going to show you how to do that. Does that sound good? So we're not only going to take care of the guy that sends a postcard to your neighborhood in your farm area that says he's going to do it at 1%. We're going to talk about the traditional aspect of things that you bump into, and yet also the emerging models. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down into segments so that each one of my sound bites or small videos show one particular element. Does that make sense? Now, is there anything else that you guys are running into besides Rex and Redfin and RP funding and OfferPad and all these others? Is there any other companies that you guys are hearing about or running into that you want me to address? If you do at any point, just unmute yourself and we'll talk about it. But I'm going to focus primarily on Redfin today because they're having the most traction in our market and we are geared to be there. We're right now their #3 market of 10 markets they're focusing on getting market share in. And so we're going to use them as our main target today. Okay, so let's just talk commission for, okay, before we do that, yes, you guys are getting pressured and we're seeing commissions go down. And yet, it's really about you educating the consumer. So before we dive into that, I just want to remind you that if you get objections are unanswered questions, okay? So how many of you, when you're having a listing conversation or a buyer conversation, how many of you, and most of you are not visible to me, there's only a handful of you that have made yourself visible, but by a show of hands, how many of you bring up commission in the conversation before you dive into what you do? Does anyone address it in advance? Okay, doesn't seem to be. That's one of the things I'm going to recommend that you do, is get more comfortable talking about what I'm going to be talking about today, because an objection is an unanswered question. So if I know Tisa, so I'm going to pick on you. Tisa, if you are my potential listing agent and I'm thinking about selling, what does that sound like? So when you go through the motions, like what set the table for me of what kind of how you approach or breach how you're paid. What does that sound like?
To be honest, I usually don't even bring it up. It's on the listing paperwork and I haven't been running into that. So it's listed, no questions asked. So we just move forward.
So that's awesome that you can get away with that. And the trouble with that is if you guys don't communicate how you're paid, a lot of consumers will sneak behind you and go to Redfin because they like the search experience of Redfin, or they like the search experience of Zillow. And Redfin and Zillow are experts at snagging them right there with an offering.
Hey, Jess.
Yes.
It's Jackie.
Hey, Jackie.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just, my bigger issue is not at the listing appointment. It's under contract. So once we get under contract and there's this repair needs to be made, or, this person needs this concession, several times now I've been asked by the cooperating agent to lower my commission. I've been asked by the buyer to lower my commission. I've been asked by the seller to lower my commission to get the deals done. And I'm talking like thousands of dollars now. So that's why I'm here on the call, is not necessarily on the listing side, but once under contract, how do I protect my commission?
The answer is no. It's that simple. And partly you're going to find yourself maybe getting into trouble like that because you're a problem solver and you help people, but you shouldn't give away your commission for that. So we're going to jump right into this.
Okay.
Because it's really about education, and most of you aren't talking about it. And so therefore they're not going to know what their options are. And the cheaper company may win, and you might lose someone to a Redfin because it says 1%, right? With a lot of asterisks afterwards. And when you educate them, like I'm going to role play now, Jackie, that discussion typically won't happen because you'll be able to justify why you're paid. And so
perfect. Thank you.
Yep, and I'm going to role play it for you guys right now. But just remember, an objection is an unanswered question. And so most of you aren't bringing certain things up in a real estate conversation that you should, to educate them so that it's not a problem later. Fair? So even if you haven't yet, Tisa, you might lose people because you're not having the conversation, or like Jackie, it might get brought up later because they think you're making oodles and oodles of money and that you should help out with the deal. Or they might just make some general assumptions, not really understanding how you're paid, and think there's some cheaper options. So I'm just going to jump right into it. And I'll tell you this, in anything you're doing, if it's working with a buyer, working with a seller, or getting the deal to close, anytime you're running into these objections, it's an education opportunity for the consumer. And because they don't quite understand how we're paid, there's a lot of assumptions and a lot of gray here. The buyers don't understand how you're paid if you don't bring it up, right? The sellers don't understand exactly how you're paid, and they see this card for 1% with a bunch of asterisks afterwards, and you might ask for 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, And the truth is they don't understand the difference. So I'm going to just jump in. So the philosophy is you need to have these conversations even with your pipeline so they understand how you're paid and they don't think they need to sneak behind your back to go to Redfin or some of these other companies. So I'm going to challenge you all that you're going to start having these conversations all the time. And instead of not having the conversation, to kind of run at it. So I'm going to stop recording. I'm going to record just this sound bite, and I'm going to role play to all of you as if you were my seller. Sound good? So one of you got to be ready to give me a zinger. So I'm going to pick on Jackie because she brought up a good one. But I'm going to do some education first, and then I'm going to ask Jackie if you wouldn't mind giving me some objection. Sound fair?
Okay.
And anyone else that wants to give me an objection they hear or are afraid of hearing, this will make it more fun. So I'm going to stop record and I'm going to start recording so we have just this soundbite to share.